Hi guys, welcome. Today I've got a big black tank sitting here. That's how big it is. So this is from US Plastics, and this is going to be the new water tank that I'm going to use to replace my existing X-Trawl tanks that I've talked about before on video and have done multiple videos on. And what I'm doing right now is getting it ready so that it can be installed. Basically, there are two things that I need to do. Number one, this has a 1-inch output, so that needs to be adapted with plumbing to get to my garden hose fitting and other things, my bucket filler, etc. I'm gonna end up needing a booster pump for the bucket filler, so we'll work on that too. I also need to install a float valve so that it can be filled from the RODI system and it can shut off the RODI when it's full. The very first thing that I want to do is get some sort of output. So this has a 1-inch threaded bulkhead, 1-inch male. So what I'm doing here, this is 1-inch outside, 3/4 on the inside. So I've got 1-inch to 3/4, then I've got a 3/4 close, is what they call that, where those two fittings are close to each other, right? And then I've got a 90, female thread, female thread. I've got like a 5-inch piece of 3/4 here that's male on both ends, and then a valve. So this is at least going to allow me to get this screwed in, shut the tank off right here, and then I can start putting water in it because right now I can't even remove the two blue tanks that I have because they're both filled. You might want to say like, well, why'd you leave the tanks full, Jeff? Like, that's dumb. But I want to know how much those actually hold because I've always guessed, because they have a bladder in them, that they hold about half of their volume. I've got a 35 and a 20. So my guess was always that they held around 30, 35 gallons of water in total. But now this is 55 gallons, so like, why not, right? So I started putting this together and then I just figured, well, why not turn on the camera? Because, I'm doing all this, like playing with pipes and stuff, and maybe you want to watch that. Maybe you don't. Maybe this one isn't for you, and that's cool too. I am not polishing a car today. So I got all this set up. I'm just screwing this last piece in, and I had to like assemble this whole thing because I wouldn't be able to spin this around because the valve is actually going to be hidden behind the tank. Obviously I could have used a longer stub pipe and then had the valve be more available, but I just wanted this to look kind of nice and tidy, and I felt that that was the best way to do that. Got everything all set. I think we can get another turn out of this. Starting to spin the bulkhead. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. And I know a lot of people might get nervous with this kind of stuff. Plumbing's really easy. Electrical can be scary, but plumbing is really easy. So it's just making what you need to make. Now, this is schedule 80 PVC. You can see there's my output right there and what it's going to look like. I've got female, 3/4 female on the end. And then we'll adapt that to whatever we need for garden hose and so on and so forth. Now on this side, I've got this lid, and the lid is threaded on. And the lid actually has a breather in it, but the breather only goes one way. So the expectation with this tank is that you're going to dump water in the top. The water is going to be pulled out of the bottom by something like a pump or a device of some kind, in my case a pressure washer, and that you would take off the lid when you're filling it. This has a pressure relief valve that allows you to suck water down, so it allows air into this tank, but it doesn't allow air out of the tank. So I have a breather for this, and that's something that we'll probably be installing as well. And that breather is it allows air in and out, but doesn't allow fluid in and out. So we have that as well. Next, we want to install our float. So I'll show you what I mean by float. So this is a float valve. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, you bolt it to the tank here, and it lets water in through this inlet, which is 1/4 inch, which is what the system over there uses. And then what happens is when the water level gets up to here, it raises this up, this little float, and it closes the valve. So I'm going to install that here, and we're going to put it up pretty much as high as we can because I want the tank to be able to be as full as possible. So I think what I'm going to do is put it like right, I want to say right here, and we'll just give ourselves enough room to kind of get the hardware in, but not much more than that. So this has a pair of nuts. This one nut keeps it on, and then the other nut, this one here, is for the actual water hose when you connect it. So we'll figure out what drill bit this is. So it looks like it's actually 3/8. I'm just gonna use a step bit. I like step bits for things like this. So I'm guessing I'm gonna have to go like one bigger than 3/8, but let's just see where we end up. I'm gonna come over this way a little bit. There's like a little piece of plastic on the inside right there, and I just don't want it to get in the way of me threading this in or it sealing. These step bits are awesome. These are Milwaukee brand, but I've used them from Harbor Freight and other brands in the past. They're great for things like this. All right, so that was a 3/8. See how that fits. Got Garage Therapy just arrived. So I have all those bottles are sitting behind the camera. I'm actually using a new microphone today, which I don't think I've used on video yet. It looks very similar to what you usually see me wear. It's a Sennheiser. My other microphone that I've used for the last couple of years is a Sennheiser as well. I do very much like Sennheiser products. I think that they work incredibly well. This one is it is a digital, so it's EW-DP-ME2. And then that's available in a couple different frequency ranges. The one that's best for my surrounding area is the R6, the high R values. So that's what I have. And I've honestly only had it for a couple of days. I do really like it. There's a receiver that mounts on top of the camera that's super nice. It has like a nice screen and stuff. Just to give you a little bit better visibility on like your audio levels and stuff as you're talking. There's a possibility this entire video might get thrown out because I don't have it set right, because it's my first one. I did a couple tests. I do have a little issue with the unit itself. It appears as though I got one that has a bad, there's a bad button on the actual receiver. The physical button isn't working properly. So I reached out to B&H this morning, and they're going to send me a replacement, which is awesome. I will say, like, if you need to order photo and video stuff, I can't say enough good stuff about B&H Photo Video. They're just fantastic to deal with. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna hook a little bit of hose to this while I have this out, because it's gonna be easier to do it. And we use these, it's 3/4 push. So basically there's a grommet in this. If you look in here, it's 2-piece. So there's like this little plastic, you put the nut on, then there's this little plastic wedge like that. Then there's another piece that goes below this, like this, another wedge. This one's clear. And then you basically want to push this in until that's pretty much flush. Like that. And then this one you slide down so the two meet, if you can. And then there's that. Just like that. So now what we can do is stick this in here, screw this in. And I might have to get like an elbow or something like that for this, just because the closeness to the wall, but we can work that out at a later date. This has an NSF sticker on it. NSF is, it's like National Safe Food Handling or something like that, I want to say it stands for. So that to me says that this is actually suitable for like food or water use, like consumption, human consumption. So that's kind of cool. Completely unnecessary, but why not? To talk about like money and stuff, this tank is about $300. That's expensive, 100% get that. The RODI system was expensive, but the way that I do RODI, I save a ton of money in resin over somebody who just does a regular DI system, especially for water that's as bad as mine is. So for me, in the long run, even doing this elaborate system, I've probably saved quite a bit over buying something like a CR Spotless and just changing out my resin when I need to. I'm hopeful that we won't have any issues with leaking. So put a little bit of water in it, just make sure, and then we'll start filling it up. Kind of a good news, bad news. Good news, it doesn't leak. Bad news, there's a little bit of stuff inside here. Trying to figure out the best way to deal with that. I do have an inlet filter on my pressure washer. So anything that was big would get filtered out. So I think what I'm gonna do is just grab a rag and wipe out as much as I can. I'm obviously not gonna be able to get to the bottom of it. Maybe I could use a reacher tool, something like that. Yeah, that's definitely low-key. Dump that in there, and then we'll mix this up. Now I'm not drinking this water, so I don't necessarily care if there's a little bit of low-key left in here. It'll eventually get diluted out. It'll run through the pressure washer. I don't think it's gonna hurt anything, but now, I think that'll do, honestly. So we'll just do one of these, slosh it around a little bit. And then we can empty it out. For those of you that don't have a YouTube channel, there's this weird phenomenon that whenever you start recording midday, somebody's always going to mow their grass in the background. Doesn't matter if they just did it yesterday and you're like, oh yeah, all my neighbors, their grass is mowed, everything looks solid. They're gonna hire a tree trimmer to come in. Like, something's going to happen, I promise that. There will always be a landscaper making your video noisy. I think what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna move this salt tank out of the way. So it's the next day. I finished this all up same day, but it was just a really busy day, lots of meetings and stuff, and I didn't have time to finish the video. So I want to go over all of this with you. First off, let's just kind of take a step back and explain what I'm doing here. I've done videos on this before, but I want to explain it more fully for anybody who might be newer to the channel or maybe just, you know, hasn't watched those videos or something along those lines. My water, when it comes in from the city, so we have city water here, it's about 400 TDS, and TDS stands for total dissolved solids. That's the amount of like sediment or salt or chlorine or whatever that is in the water, right? Contaminants in the water. So deionized water is typically around 0 to 1 parts per million. So that TDS is measured in parts per million, or ppm. What happens is when water comes into my house, it comes in on the far side, on the exterior of the house, and then it comes and gets piped over here. So this is the actual inlet, the main inlet for my house is right here coming out of the wall. And this house is plumbed for a water softener. So many of the houses in this development have water softeners. I do too. This is mine. This is an AquaSure. I've done a video on that. It works very well. It's pretty inexpensive. You can buy them from Lowe's. They're made in California. But this is like my main on-off for the whole house. This goes into the AquaSure, and then it comes out, and this goes to the rest of my house, this pipe right here through the wall. I also have a hose bib up here, so this is softened water that is sitting up here. Now my softened water is around 400 TDS because a softener doesn't actually remove solids, it actually replaces some contaminants with other contaminants, right? It's adding salt to the water to make the water softer. And that's what this guy right here is, this black plastic container with this lid on it. This is actually a salt container. So it's got granulated salt in it like this. And basically what happens is this softener puts water in here and then it sucks the water back out and it uses that to condition the water that is inside here as water runs through it to make your water soft or you know, not hard, basically, demineralize the water. My softened water is like 400 TDS and it contains salt, so that will leave spots on your car. It's good for drinking, it's good for humans, it's good for washing dishes and cleaning your hair and like doing things around the house, cleaning, right? Soft water is typically better for cleaning, but it will still leave spots on your car. How do we get around that? Well, you can have a DI system. So you buy something like CR Spotless or DI Rinse or something along those lines, one of those big canisters that's full of the blue stuff, and you hang that on your wall and you run your water through it. Well, the problem is that when your water is 400 TDS, you go through resin like crazy. And the resin, the stuff that's in here, is pretty expensive. A 5-pound bag of it is like 75 bucks. And with water that's this bad, a 5-pound bag of it would probably last me maybe a month if I was lucky. What I decided to do was do reverse osmosis, which is what this is, then deionize. And when you do a reverse osmosis is a type of filtration. Often you'll see them like in office buildings or near a kitchen sink for drinking water. The thing with reverse osmosis is it is very, very, very highly effective, but it's also very low flow. So this unit produces water that's in like the 10 to 12 TDS range. So it takes it from 400. I've actually seen single digits. If you let it run for a little while, it gets more efficient the more it runs. I've seen single digits like in the 8 or 9 range. But the problem is that this actually only makes about 300 gallons per day. If it's running full bore all day long, it'll make about 300 gallons in one day. And when you think about that, okay, 300 gallons in one day, that's not a lot. Just 3,600 minutes in a day, right? So we're talking about 1/10 of a gallon per minute. And my pressure washer over here is drawing 3.3. So how do you get around that? Well, you have the reverse osmosis get stored in a tank, okay? So what we have here is softener. Out of the softener, we have water here. That goes into the reverse osmosis system. So we've got a couple stages. There's a sediment filter, which will remove heavy sediment. There's a carbon filter. And then there are 2 reverse osmosis membranes that it runs through in parallel. So this is for higher capacity. When it's done with that, it comes down to deionization. So this is, 9 to 12 TDS. Over here, we're 0. So when we're talking about deionization is an interesting process. Normally you buy resin that is called mixed bed resin. So you'll see if you ever pick up DI resin, typically on the bag, it'll say mixed bed. And mixed bed is typically 60-40 or 50-50 mixed. And it's 2 different types of granules. So there is anion and cation. So cation removes certain types of impurities and anion removes other different types of impurities. But they each have specific types of impurities that they remove. So I go sediment, carbon, reverse osmosis, cation, anion, mixed bed. And then my product is here. And my product is 0 TDS, 0. And it is honestly incredibly reliable and works very well, and I go through very little resin. I last replaced the resin in these canisters in 2024, and we're at the end of February. These last me a really long time, and it's because my source water coming into here is 9 to 12 TDS. So to make 0 come out, it doesn't really take a lot of work. But because of that, my flow is very low. So I have to store water in order to feed my pressure washer. So I actually have in here deionized water. So this is full of DI water. And I've got 55 gallons of it. I can draw with this and it'll run for, 15 minutes before it runs out of water, which is enough to wash probably 6 cars. My old tanks held about 35 gallons and I was able to get through 3 cars with it. So I'd say that I could probably get through 5 pretty easily. So here is a TDS meter, just so you know that I'm not screwing with you. I'm going to stick it in this bucket. Now I just filled this bucket for the first time yesterday. Oh, I guess you can't see that in the camera, but it's 2 parts per million. So my water currently in here is 2 ppm. And that's after it's a brand new canister that I just filled up. I emptied these into it. There was some rust in the bottom of the line there that I saw when I was emptying it all out. One of the fittings in there was rusting. And I used a little bit of Iconic to clean this out. I didn't do the best job. So this will drop down given some time. But all this to say, like 2 TDS, 5 TDS, once you're in the single digits, you really don't have to worry about water spots. Like it's pretty hard to get water spots. So that's the way that I run my system. Now you could do something, like I said, like a CR spotless. You could do something different. You could do high flow RO. There are a lot of different options, but a high flow RO system is really expensive if you want something that can keep up with 4 gallons per minute. And if you want something on the DI side that can keep up with 4 gallons per minute, that's also expensive. So, you know, there's solutions out there, like I mentioned the CR spotless. Well, that can only do 2 gallons per minute. So something like this pressure washer is actually too big for that. So I've been using this system for about 4 years. It's one of the first things that I built when I started the channel. Those Extral tanks did a decent job. They were pretty inexpensive. They were something that was available locally. I started off with one, added the other. They did just fine. But this is a much more complete solution. So basically, the way that I'm filling this is the exit of my DI goes into a float valve that's sitting in the back here. When this float valve is down, we hear the system kick on. This little booster pump runs, gets up to 80 pressure, which is where this whole system runs the most efficient. And then once the water tank is full, this little float valve shuts off the water, and then all of this stuff shuts down, which is awesome. Now, to get water out of this, on the back, there's that 1-inch connection that I showed you on camera. And out of that, I have 3/4 inch PVC. We can kind of see what I did here. So I've got 3/4 inch PVC. I have a shutoff valve that's right here that you really can't see, but it's right at the edge of the tank. So I can shut off the tank from everything else and just have the tank be separate. Next, I have a T, and one side of the T goes to a garden hose. And that garden hose feeds the pressure washer. So if you see that brass fitting down there, that is the pressure washer. Now I did order, you see the blue hose is kind of coiled up here. It's a little long. It's like 7, 8 feet, maybe 10 feet. I don't know. I need a 5-foot hose. So I ordered a 5-foot hose. So I'm going to be replacing that blue with a 5-foot hose. And then up here, you can see that I teed up with a 1/2-inch line into this pressure water pump, it says on the side of it. It's actually for an RV, but that's my bucket filler. So if you see this garden hose right here, this is connected to the outlet of that. And if I turn this on, that kicks on, and there is my bucket filler. And there we are. And obviously, as the tank ran down, this picked up to start filling that tank back up and reclaim the water that I used. So adding this tank really did a couple of things for me. Number 1, more capacity. Number 2, less room taken on the floor. I have more space now. Number 3, I think it fits the aesthetic better and looks better overall in the garage. Number 4, I now have an automatic fill where I don't have to come over here and turn this on and turn this off manually like I did with the pressure tanks. Because the tanks held pressure, the old ones, it would go back and forth as my house pressure went up and down because it's city water, right? So neighbor sprinklers turn on, my pressure drops down slightly. Now all of a sudden I've got like resin backwashing into these units. So I no longer have to worry about that. I've got plenty of capacity. I have a bucket filler now that actually just runs. I could literally run this tank dry, and that little pump back there does 4 gallons per minute. So that's more than enough to fill up a bucket, a minute to fill up a bucket. I'm good with that. And yeah, I mean, everything is nice and dialed in. I've got nice fittings. I did, like I mentioned, go with Schedule 80 plumbing. You don't need Schedule 80. You could use PEX, you could use Schedule 40, you could use copper, you could use a variety of different things. I ended up going with Schedule 80 because I like the gray finish and because plastic isn't going to, the DI water isn't going to leach minerals from the plastic. And that's something to know about DI water. It's actually a little caustic. Because the DI water is so demineralized, it actually sucks in minerals from all of the things around it. So if you take brass fittings and you put them into DI water, it'll actually pit and eat at the fittings themselves. Same thing, like if you consume it as a human, you'll actually get sick from it. So there we go. How about that? It filled this back up, shut off the float valve, and we're good to go. So anyway, that's kind of all that I have on this. I'm gonna do some washing with it and stuff tomorrow, but I'm really excited about it. You know, back in the past, I've always had to like mess around with this, turn it on, turn it off, do this, do that. I always had to like make sure that I had enough water. I always have 3 cars here, but it's like if you spend a little bit of extra time on one of them, then next thing you know, you're running low on water and then you can't finish your car. I've ended up with a car covered in soap before, once or twice. Especially if you're doing like a 3 pH or something where you're doing multiple soaps and rinses. So I'm pretty happy with this tank. This came from US Plastics. I'll throw a link in the description. It's like $300, but there's also shipping and stuff involved. FedEx brought it for me. It's not in perfect condition. There is a scratch on the front of it. It was just kind of wrapped in saran wrap. I think it just is what it is. It's an industrial product, right? So even like, I know people have issues with the Cox reels and some other things having, you know, some sort of marks on them. I think that's just one of those things that we deal with when we're working with industrial products. This is technically a water tank like for a farm or for a piece of equipment, an implement. So, you know, I'm happy that I was able to make this work, and I think it's actually a really good option here, and I'm fairly happy with how it came out. I do wish this was jogged over to the side a little bit more. I wish that I could kick this back another inch or two. You know, maybe at some point I'll feel the need to adjust that and move it over just a touch, but I mean, I'm fairly happy with how it came out. So other things that I'm waiting on, just final things. Like I said, I ordered a 5-foot hose. That's a Continental hose. It's black, so it's not the OG hose because the OG hose comes in a 6-foot. That's what I have for my bucket filler. I also have an on-off coming for right here. So it's just going to be on my inlet side of my pressure washer. Because my hose bib is all the way back here and it's not easily accessible, just a little quarter turn on-off, very similar to the one that I have on here, is going to be coming for that. That way, if I want to disconnect my pressure washer for any reason, or just because like I like to disconnect this and put the PP plug in, I need to shut the water off to do that. And right now I don't have a good way to do that without moving this out and reaching back there and going down there and doing it. So just minor little things left to dial in, but I'm real close, really close. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching. If you're local to me and you want to buy 2 Extrol tanks, 20 gallon, 35 gallon, I'll cut you a sweet deal on them because I don't want them to be in my garage for long. Otherwise, we'll be washing tomorrow. We'll be using some more Cleantel products. We'll be using the pressure washer. I have a couple more nozzles coming for this too. So these are the MTM nozzles. You can see the insert in the center of that. So this is a Mossmatic housing, but this is an MTM nozzle in the center. Now previously I had nozzles that were from Sprayer Supply. They're Clean Right nozzles. They used to come on the OG. Like when you bought this, it would come with one of those. They changed from doing those to doing these MTM ones, and I don't like the MTM ones as much. They don't have writing on the front. You can't see what size they are. I don't think the 40 degree is really 40 degree. So I ordered 2 more of those. They're coming from Clean Right, so they should be here shortly. And then like, I honestly think I'm done here. I'm really, really happy with how this came out. The pressure washer is awesome. All this stuff is really good. And yeah, so thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. Hope you're having a great day, and we'll see you next time.